You know, it's wild how these channels like ViralImpactAI and podcasts like What Science is Hiding from You, they just like blow up with these stories about people having near-death experiences.
It really seems like we're all obsessed with like what happens after we die, like trying to find some sort of answer.
Yeah, totally. And for this deep dive, we're looking at this super interesting talk between these two doctors, Dr. Manuel Sansegara and Dr. Jose Morales.
Oh yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah, it's on ViralImpactAI. And the thing is, Dr. Morales is a doctor himself, and he's talking about his own NDE.
Wow, that's got to be a trip.
I know, it's like he's got this front row seat to this crazy mystery, and he's also like the main character.
Having that scientific background must add a whole other dimension to it.
Right, it's not just someone's like, you know, spiritual story, but it's coming from a place of like medical knowledge and all those years of observing the human body.
It's almost like those two worlds, like science and personal experience, are colliding.
Exactly, and that's what makes this so fascinating. So Dr. Morales explains how his NDE started with this sudden cardiac arrhythmia.
Really, just out of nowhere.
Yeah, totally unexpected. He was like super content with his life at the time.
That suddenness, that's something you hear a lot in these NDE stories.
Yeah, one minute you're fine, the next minute, boom, you're in another dimension.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
For sure, but what really got me was his description of this out-of-body experience. He actually saw himself from above, like his body just lying there.
Whoa, I can't even imagine.
Right, and here's the thing, Dr. Morales, he's a doctor. He's seen death up close tons of times, but now he's on the other side of it.
Yeah, it's like his whole medical training is suddenly flipped on its head.
Totally, and I think that's why it felt so real to him more than maybe someone without that background.
Makes sense, like he had this framework to understand what was happening.
Right, and then it gets even crazier. He talks about being pulled into this massive dark space and then like drawn toward this comforting light.
You know, that's another common thing in these stories that shift from like fear to peace.
It's like in all that chaos, there's this like beacon guiding them towards something good.
Like a universal compass.
Okay, now this is where things get really interesting for me.
Yeah.
He describes coming into this stunning alpine landscape, and he feels this incredible serenity, like he's connected to everything around him.
Wow, so his body's in critical condition, but his mind is experiencing this totally different reality.
It's like, whoa, what's really going on here?
It definitely makes you question everything we think we know about consciousness in the body.
For sure, it's like reality is way more complex than we can even grasp. And then hold on, there's more. He meets his friend Tomas Jose, who had already passed away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Tomas Jose is like in this perfect idealized form. They don't actually talk, but there's this deep connection between them.
That's incredible. You hear about these reunions with loved ones and NDEs.
I know, it's like they're communicating on a level we can't even comprehend.
Like some kind of universal language of emotions.
And then to add another layer to this whole thing, Dr. Morales describes this being of light that appears.
That's another common element in these stories, right?
Totally. This being is usually described as like super benevolent and awe-inspiring.
It's like meeting the embodiment of pure love and acceptance.
And then comes the part that gave me chills, the life review.
Yeah, he sees all these key moments from his life.
Especially the times he hurt other people.
That's gotta be intense.
But he wasn't just watching it, he was feeling everything. The emotional impact on the people around him.
That's hip.
Like a total immersion in the consequences of his actions.
So different from how we normally think about our choices.
Right. It really highlights how interconnected we all are.
Like every action sends ripples out into the world.
And you know what? It makes me wonder, if we all experience that level of empathy, would we act differently? Would the world be a better place?
It's a profound question, and it's at the heart of why these NDEs are so fascinating. They offer this glimpse into a different way of understanding reality.
A reality where empathy and connection are like the most important things.
Exactly. And you know, we touched on this earlier, but the connection between NDEs and quantum physics.
Yeah. Can we talk about that a bit more? Because I'm still trying to wrap my head around quantum physics.
Sure, it's complicated stuff, but the basic idea is that quantum physics looks at the universe at the tiniest level, like subatomic particles.
Okay, so like way smaller than atoms.
Yeah, and what they found is that things work really differently down there. It challenges everything we thought we knew about how the world works.
What do you mean?
Well, for example, there's this concept called non-locality, which means that particles can be connected across huge distances and they can influence each other instantly.
So like two particles on opposite sides of the universe could be linked.
Exactly. It's mind-blowing, right? And then there's quantum entanglement, which is similar. Two particles, no matter how far apart, stay connected and can affect each other's state like immediately.
Whoa, so you're saying there's this deep interconnectedness even at the smallest level of the universe.
Exactly. Like everything is entangled in ways we're just beginning to understand.
That's like our brains can barely grasp it.
Right. And some physicists are starting to think that consciousness itself might not just be in the brain, but could be like a field that exists everywhere, kind of like gravity.
Wait, so you're saying consciousness is a fundamental force of the universe?
It's a radical idea, but it's gaining traction.
That's crazy.
They think that maybe the brain is like a receiver for consciousness, tuning into this field like a radio tunes into a specific frequency.
So consciousness isn't created by the brain. It's more like the brain is accessing it from somewhere else.
That's one way to think about it, and this could explain how consciousness could keep going even when the brain stops working, like in NDEs.
It's like our whole understanding of reality is shifting.
Totally. NDEs are pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible.
So if consciousness isn't limited to the brain, then what does death really mean?
That's the big question, right? Is it the end, or is it a transition to something else?
NDEs give us these glimpses into what might be on the other side.
They challenge us to think differently about our own mortality.
You know, it's interesting, Dr. Morales, with all his medical knowledge, he's not afraid to talk about the spiritual side of his experience.
Yeah, he talks about feeling this deep peace and losing his fear of death.
That seems to be common for people who've had NDEs.
Like facing death head on takes away the fear of the unknown.
It makes you think, how would we live differently if we weren't so afraid of dying? Would we focus on different things? Would we appreciate life more?
Those are great questions to consider. Maybe by exploring these experiences, we can learn to live more authentically.
So after the life review, Dr. Morales feels this strong pull to go back to his body. He wants to make things right with the people he's hurt.
That desire to return is something you hear a lot in NDEs.
Like they've been given a second chance and they have a purpose now.
To live more compassionately and make a positive impact.
But Dr. Morales' coming back wasn't easy. He felt incredible pain as his consciousness returned to his body.
That makes sense. There's this huge contrast between the blissful NDE world and the harshness of physical reality.
It's like they come back as different people almost.
Oh, yeah. He calls it a dark night of the soul. He's wrestling with everything he's experienced.
It sounds like a period of intense transformation, like shedding old beliefs and embracing a new way of being.
And ultimately, it leads him to make some major life changes.
Oh, really? Like what?
He retires early from his medical practice and starts focusing on spirituality and connecting with other NDE experiencers.
Wow, so he uses his experience to help others.
Yeah, he shares his story to help people understand life and death.
That's pretty amazing, turning something so personal into a way to connect with people.
It shows how powerful these experiences can be.
I'm curious, did people believe him? Did his medical background make them more open to his story?
Well, at first he was scared to talk about it. He thought people would make fun of him or not believe him.
Yeah, that's understandable.
But eventually he felt like he had to share it.
It takes courage to put yourself out there like that.
And while some people were skeptical, his sincerity and his professional background resonated with a lot of people.
And he found other people who had similar experiences.
Yeah, he realized he wasn't alone.
There's something so comforting about sharing our experiences, even the really strange ones.
It creates a sense of community.
You know, Dr. Morales' story shows how healing these NDE accounts can be, especially for people who are grieving.
There's this story about him talking to a patient who had lost her son.
Oh, wow. Did it help her?
Yeah, it gave her a lot of comfort. It helped her see death in a different light and gave her hope that her son's consciousness might still exist.
That's beautiful. Even in the face of death, there's still hope and connection.
Absolutely. But before we go deeper into the cultural and spiritual aspects of NDEs, let's take a step back and reflect.
Sounds good. What stands out to you the most from Dr. Morales' story?
For me, it's the feeling of interconnectedness that runs through his whole experience.
Yeah, I see that too in the life review and meeting his friend, and even in the idea of consciousness as a universal field.
It challenges us to rethink how we see ourselves and the world.
Like we're all part of something much bigger than ourselves.
And maybe by embracing that connection, we can find more meaning and purpose in our lives.
All right, so now let's shift gears a bit and look at how different cultures and spiritual traditions have interpreted NDEs.
Yeah, Dr. Morales' experience, while unique, has these universal themes that have fascinated humans for centuries.
Okay, let's dive in, but first we're going to take a quick break to gather our thoughts and get ready for the final part of our deep dive into NDEs. Stay with us.
Welcome back. You know, it's amazing to think that Dr. Morales' experience, while so personal, it also connects to something much bigger, like these near-death experiences. They've been a part of human cultures and spiritual traditions for centuries.
It's true, way before modern science started looking into NDEs, cultures all over the world were trying to understand life and death, and they wove these experiences into their beliefs and rituals.
Like the ancient Egyptians and their Book of the Dead, it talks about the soul's journey through the underworld.
Exactly, or in Tibetan Buddhism, they have the bardo, which is like this intermediate state between death and rebirth. It seems like no matter where you come from, humans are just fascinated by what happens after we die.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, even though different cultures interpret them differently, there are these core elements that are super similar.
Like what?
The guiding light, the life review, meeting deceased loved ones. These themes pop up everywhere, regardless of culture or time period.
It's like we're all tapping into the same universal experience.
Exactly, and that makes you think maybe NDEs are more than just something happening in the brain. Maybe they're glimpses into a deeper reality, a spiritual dimension that connects us all.
So where do we go from here? We've got ancient wisdom, we've got science exploring quantum physics, and we have personal stories like Dr. Morales is bridging those two worlds.
It's like we're standing at the edge of this vast, uncharted territory.
It's a little intimidating, but also super exciting.
Yeah, the exploration is just beginning. NDEs are pushing us to rethink our understanding of the universe, to combine science and spirituality, and to embrace the mystery of what it means to be human.
This deep dive has definitely given me more questions than answers.
But that's the whole point. NDEs aren't about finding all the answers, they're about sparking a journey of questioning, learning, and growing.
If anyone listening is feeling that same spark, I recommend checking out the full conversation between Dr. Manuel Sansegara and Dr. Jose Morales on ViralImpactAI.
And What Science is Hiding from You has some great stuff on this topic too.
Those are great places to start if you want to explore this more.
It's a fascinating journey, and who knows, it might just change how you see life, death, and everything in between.
On that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. But I want to leave you with one last thought. What if these near-death experiences aren't just meant to be studied, but to be integrated into our lives? What if they can inspire us to live with more purpose, compassion, and connection?
That's something to think about.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.